Hello everyone, in this live stream recording we are going to have a look at creating a falling word typing game, and we're going to create something along these lines here. As you see here, if I hit play, we see these words falling from the top of our screen, and we have to type them out before they reach the end in order to win, or else our game will punish us. So that is kind of the base of the game. It's just plain typing, and of course we generate random words. You can do plenty of stuff with this, like do more words. You can have words explode into other words. You can create cool effects when typing and destroying words. You can make different kinds of punishments when you type the wrong letters, or if the words reach the bottom of your screen. There's so much stuff that you can do with this. It's a really fun, simple game. And it's actually fairly hard to code. Also, if you're wondering about the hat, if you're watching this when it's not December, I'm sorry, but it's currently December, so that's why the hat is there. I wanted to bring it on. And this game is inspired by many games of this type, but especially this one that I really like, called Z-Type. So it does basically the exact same thing, but the cool thing is here that they've added some effects. So every time you type a letter, it shoots out its gun. And that's just really fun. So that's an example of where you can take this very easily. They use pretty much the same back-end code as what I've done here. So just a proof of concept to get you started, but that's an example of where you can take it from here. And without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go File, New Project, and here we're going to write, let's call it something like word falling word typing game. Best description of all time. And then we'll hit 2D and hit create project, and Unity is going to load up a fresh project for us. So meanwhile, we can have a look at some questions in the chat here if we have anything pressing. One thing that I do want to mention, oh look, it's working. But one thing that I do want to mention is, unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in this month's or this previous Ludum Dare. I really wanted to, but I was at DreamHack, so I was prevented from doing so. But I definitely want to make a small game soon. I just really want to do some programming. Not for a tutorial, just for fun. So hopefully I'll do something soon if I get the time. But now our Unity project has booted up, so we are going to continue with the tutorial. First thing first, I'm going to select my main camera, and I'm going to change the background to kind of a dark color. We can go do black, we can do a dark green if we want it to be kind of matrix-like. It could be fun. Let's do that. And let's save the scene right away here under main so that I can hit Ctrl+S without it popping up. Next, we could go ahead and sketch out a canvas and a text element and kind of make that look great already. However, that's not really the base of our game. What I ended up doing was actually creating 90% of the code in a non-visible, non-Unity specific way. And I think that works really well for this game because all we are really handling is words. And words are very simple objects. They are in essence just strings. And when we need to display them, all we need is a text element. So it's really, really simple to create this inside of Unity. So let's instead begin by kind of sketching out the structure of our program and then start showing it using Unity. So we'll go ahead and first of all create an empty object, and we'll reset this inside of Unity, and we'll call it our word manager. And this is where we'll add a component called word manager of type C#. Let's say create an add, and let's open it up in Visual Studio. And the first thing that we want to add to this script, well, we can go ahead and delete the start and update methods. But the first thing that we want to add is a list that will contain all of our words. Now, we haven't gone ahead and created a word class. You could go ahead and just use a string here, but I actually want to define these words as classes so we can have each word be responsible for different things, such as removing letters, checking how many letters are left, and yeah, just keeping track of how much of the word we've currently written. So that's why I want to go ahead and create a separate class for this that we'll create in just a second, and we'll just call this list words. I'm also going to make it public so that we can see it in the inspector and so that we might be able to edit it through script later. Now we can save this and we can go into Unity again, and let's this time create a C# script just inside of the project panel because we don't want this to sit on any objects. We just want this to be the word C# script. Let's open this up in Visual Studio as well. Come on, there we go. And this here, we don't want to derive from mono behavior. Again, we don't want this to be a component. We just want this to be a class. Therefore, we can also delete both the start and the update method. And we'll also make sure to mark this class as system.serializable so that all of our variables will show up inside of the Unity inspector. And the main variable that we want to create here is a public string. And this is of course going to contain the word itself. We'll also create a constructor. So public word. And a constructor is something that I haven't used that much in my tutorials. Basically what it is a way to define what happens when our class is created. So when we create a new word object, our constructor allows us to set up initial variables and do kind of, set up stuff. So one thing that we could do here is allow ourselves to pass in a word. So I'm going to write _word so we don't confuse these two. And then inside of our constructor, we can set word equal to _word. This way, when we go inside of our word manager, and if we in here were to just create, say, a start method, we can now create a new word and call it word simply by setting it equal to a new word. And then we can pass in a string, say, example. There we go. And we don't have to create the new word. And then afterwards go word.word equals example. So it's just cleaner. Cool. And for some reason, this is not kind of recognizing that we've created a word script. And I think all we need to do is restart Visual Studio and that should work once more. Let's try that. So open up Visual Studio here and we should see it recognizing the fact that word is a thing. Cool. So now inside of our word manager, we can add some more functionality. The first thing that we want to do is add a new word. To do that, we'll create a start method. And inside of our start method, we'll just begin by adding a few words. Let's just start by creating 3 words. Of course, we need a method in order to create these words. So we'll create a public void add word. And in here, we'll create a new word in the way that I just showed. So word equals a new word. And now we can feed it in a word, such as, again, example. However, we don't want to feed it in a word that is predefined. We want to use a random word. And therefore, we need to create a random word generator. So inside of Unity, we'll again go to the project, hit C# script, and create a word generator. And let's double click this to open it up in Visual Studio as well. Again, whoops, don't do that. Again, we want to delete both of our methods. And inside of our word generator, we basically want to have some kind of public static string called getRandomWord. So this is basically just a static method that will return a random word of our choosing. And in order to get a random word, we could of course have a look at creating our own words from scratch if you don't want it to be something from the English language. Or you could simply use a very, very long list of words. You could take words from a dictionary, you could create your own huge text file with a bunch of words that you get a random one from. And this is actually fairly easy. Loading data in from a text file in Unity is actually not something that has to be incredibly hard. But the absolute easiest way is simply defining a very, very big array that we can get a random word from. And I've actually done this. So let's go ahead and write private static string. Let's mark it as an array and we'll call it our word list. And the way that we create this word list is basically by opening and closing 2 curly brackets. We'll end with a semicolon. And in here we can then write each word. So word 1, word 2, and so on. And this is the syntax. And I've gone ahead and created a whole list of words using this syntax that I'm just going to copy in from my secondary monitor here. So you can see I have a bunch of words like sidewalk, jump, pretty, wood, and so on. And you can add as many words as you want here or delete as many words as you want. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm also going to show you where I got these words from, because I'm not that creative in coming up with cool words to use. I actually just went to Chrome and searched for random word generator. And this site came up, randomlists.com/randomwords. And in here I could specify a quantity, so a amount of words. If we type in 50 here, and whether or not I want duplicates, I don't want that, and then hit refresh, you can see it gives me 50 words. And if we now simply select all of these, hit copy, and paste them into some kind of text software, so I have Sublime here, you can see it pastes them nicely, one word per line. So you could easily save this as a text file and load it into Unity, or format it in the same way that I've done here. Totally up to you. Again, I will have these words available for you as part of the project on GitHub if you want to download it. So yeah, but for now you can just use your own placeholder words. Cool, so let me just see if everything is cool with the chat here. Awesome, things are going according to plan, I think. Except for the hat, maybe that was kind of improv, but that's all right. And yes, this is super hard coding, but it works, so that's all right. So now when we want to get a random word, all we want to do is just get a random element inside of this string array. And the way to do that is by first getting a random index, so the number associated with one of these elements. We'll create an integer called random index and set it equal to random. And now it doesn't autocomplete here, but I'm sure that this is correct, random.range. And we want to get a number between 0, so the first index is 0, that's sidewalk, and then the length of our array, so that's going to be word list.length. Then we can take this random index and use it to find a word. So our string random word will be equal to our word list, and then we use the index random index. Cool, and then we can simply return our random word. So now inside of our word manager, instead of just hard coding in a word here, we can get a random word really easily. All we need to do is write word generator, and for some reason again it isn't registering here, but we have to do dot, and then I think it's get random word, yes. Dot get random word, and open and close that. So if we now save this, close down Visual Studio once again to get our autocomplete back here. If one of you guys has a trick other than just restarting Visual Studio for this, that would be really nice. It's been acting out today. And now you should see that, yeah, this looks fine. And inside of our word manager, it now recognizes that we can go word generator dot get random word. So now we are adding some random words, and we can actually just go ahead and maybe debug.log these to show them in our console. So we're going to do a debug.log with our word.word. If we save that, go into Unity, and I think we can just go ahead and hit play here. We should see 3 random words pop into the console. Awesome. And inside of our word manager, we still see an empty list. And that's because we now need to take our word that we created and add it to our word list. And that's super easy. All we need to do, instead of, actually let's keep the debug.log here, but all we need to do is go words.add, and we then feed it in our new word. And now we should see that if we play the game inside of Unity and wait for it to compile here, 3 words gets added to our array: jazzy, floor, and scarce. Awesome. And you'll get, of course, 3 random words each time you play. So that's it for adding words. However, we don't have any way of registering what we are typing, and we don't have any way of kind of removing words. So next, let's create a public void called type letter. And here we'll of course take in a letter. So this is going to be of type char or character. We'll call it letter. And we want to do some checking here. So the first thing that we want to do is define an active word. So in my demo, I basically just went ahead and said the first word with the starting letter that you type will from here on out be the active word. And all letters you type from there will only be checked against that word. So you basically just select a word by typing the first letter in the word. And that's what we'll do here. Let's go to the top and let's create kind of an active word. So let's do private bool has active word. And let's also do a private word, which will store the active word. Then down here, when we type the letter, we'll check if has active word. So if we already have an active word, we can go ahead and check if the letter that we typed was the next letter in the sequence. And if it is, we want to remove a letter from the word. So check if letter was next, remove it from the word. If it was not, so if we don't have an active word, well then we want to check if the letter that we typed is the beginning letter in any of the words on screen. So we want to loop through all of our words. So for each word, which we'll call word in our words list, we want to check if the word, and then we want to check if the first letter in the word. We can of course do word.word and then get the first character in this string and see if that is equal to letter. And this will actually work, but it's not pretty. I think a better way of doing this is by going into our word here and simply creating a function that will call public char get next letter. So this function will return a character which is the next letter in our word. So if we haven't removed any letters in our word, this will always return the first letter. So here we can simply return word, and then in the beginning this is going to be 0. Next it's going to be 1, then 2, then 3. So we need some kind of index specifying what letter we're currently looking at in our word, or how many letters we have typed so far. And we'll do that up here. We'll create a private integer called type index, and we'll default this to 0. So inside of our constructor, we'll set type index equal to 0. Then when we get the next letter, we'll simply return word to the type index, which will start off at 0. So now inside of our word manager, we, instead of doing if word.word to the 0th is equal to letter, we'll simply do if word.next letter is equal to letter. And if it is, well then we want to go ahead and select or mark this word as the active word. So we'll set active word equal to this word. We'll also set has active word to true because now we have an active word. And we also want to go word.type letter. So we want to remove the first letter. We want to type it out. To do that, we'll need to create another method. So we'll do a public void called type letter. And let's see here. All we want to do here is really just increase the type index. And then we want to remove the letter on screen. But we'll do that later when displaying it. All we need to do right now is just increase the type index, and our system will understand that this letter has been typed. Let's save that. Let's go into our word manager. And at the very bottom here, we simply want to break out of our for each statement. This will make sure that as soon as we find a letter and set it active, we don't go on and search for more letters more words starting with the same letter and also set those to active. That will lead to some very weird behavior. So we'll make sure to put break here, and so it will exit out of our for each. So if we actually find an active word, all we need to do is check if the letter was next. So if if active word dot get next letter is equal to letter, the same check that we do down here, but now we check against the active word. If this is the case, well then we want to go ahead and type it. So we can simply do active word, active word dot type letter. And there we go. And finally, we can go to the bottom and we check if we have an active word. So if has active word and active word dot word typed or is complete or something along these lines. So if we've typed the entire word here, well, then we want to set has active word to false. And then we want to remove this word from the list. So words.remove active word. So we put this in here just to make sure that if we finish typing the word, we mark it as non-active and we remove it from the list. We also, all we need to do this is go and make a method for checking if the word has been typed through. And that is actually a very simple thing to do. All we need to do is go into our word, create a public bool called word typed. And here we'll create a boolean called word typed, set it equal to, and now here we need to make a check. We want to check if type index is greater than or equal to, word.length. So if our index starting at 0 has been increased enough times that it is now equal to or greater than the length of the word, all of our word has been typed. And so word type will be true. If not, this will be false, and then word type will too be false. So if word typed, we can go ahead and remove the word on screen. Again, we won't do this yet. And then we can simply return our word typed variable so that we know inside of our word manager whether or not it was typed. Cool, so I believe this should actually work now. I don't think we'll get any errors. Hopefully, yes. Awesome, and if we hit play, let's see what happens. So we get crack, rely, and homely. And if I have a look inside of my word manager here and type in crack, nothing happens. All right, so this is interesting. Nothing currently happens. Let's see what we're doing right. Or wrong here. So of course we aren't triggering our type letter. Now this function will totally work, but we aren't setting this up to our keyboard. So the next thing that we want to do is create a script that will actually call this type letter function. And before we do that, I just want to have a quick look in the chat to see if everyone's following. I know this is very programming intensive, especially compared to some of the other live streams, but I think it's pretty neat, and it's always fun to try and take another approach than the usual Unity approach, because this is not kind of how you would normally go about creating something in Unity. Normally you start with game objects and components and you try and kind of work your way through without doing any scripting, and then when you really need to script something, you go and add a tiny script that does only what you need and not more. But here we are actually coding kind of an entire structure for a program. And then later we'll just be adding Unity on top to kind of display everything. So awesome to you guys who are enjoying the hat. I hope you guys are feeling nice. And are able to follow along. Looks like it. That's awesome. And so those of you who are asking if this will be on YouTube, of course it will, always is. It will be up this Sunday. Cool, so next up, let's trigger this type letter function so that we can actually see this stuff working. To do that, we need to go into Unity and we need to create another script on our word manager. And this one we'll call word input. Again, C#, create an add. Let's double click it to open it up in Visual Studio. And we want to reload the solution here. Cool, and here we'll use a very, very simple function that not a lot of people know about. We'll use it inside of the update, and it's called input.inputString. This basically, as it says here, returns the keyboard input entered this frame. So basically, if you just slam your hands on the keyboard, this is going to show all of the characters that you typed that frame. And the cool thing for us is that we can loop through these as individual characters to make sure that we get them all. So that if you type multiple characters in one frame, we will catch them all. And insert Pokemon pun here. So we basically just want to go and loop through them using a for each loop. We want to look at each character, which we'll call letter, in our input.input string. And for each one of these, we want to access our word manager and type out a letter. So for now, we can maybe just do a debug.log to see that this is working, and we'll just debug.log out the letter that we're looking at. If we save this, go into Unity and play, it will of course debug.log our 3 words. And then if I try and write test, we can see it T-E-S-T. So it's working. Awesome. And if I just slam my hands on the keyboard, whoa, okay, something happened there. I might have hit something that I shouldn't. You can see that it gets all of the keys, and I wasn't actually able to get multiple in a single frame, or maybe I was and it just split them up. But we do get all of them even if I press multiple keys simultaneously. So that is pretty cool. And I need to reopen all of the programs that I just minimized. So now we can go and create a reference to our word manager. We'll create a, whoops, caps lock is on, a public word manager, and we'll call it word manager. And we'll just reference this through the inspector. Then in here, we'll access our word manager and we'll go dot type letter. And the letter that we want to type is the letter that we're looking at. If we save that, go into Unity and hit play, we should now see that this function gets called. And let's check. If we select our word manager and I try and type out the word somber, we get a null reference. And that's because I need to reference this. Boom, there we go. Okay, let's try this again. And I try and type out the word awesome, and it would be pretty awesome if it now works. Awesome. Boom, it's removed from the list. So if I type out the word correctly, it gets removed from the list. Also, if I start typing mellow, so I'll type an M and an E, I'll then try typing U a bunch of times and A, which is not in the word, nothing happens, until I type the L, L, and the O and W, and now it gets removed from the list. So you can type anything that you want, but you can only proceed by typing the correct character, and that's what we want. You can of course add penalties if you don't type the correct stuff, reduce your score, or maybe add random words when you type the wrong thing, but we now have a way of differentiating between the two. Super cool. So the next thing that we want to do is probably allow ourselves to see the words on the screen. So let's go ahead and make these visible. And this is kind of the Unity part of this tutorial. So we'll go inside of our hierarchy and we'll right click, we'll go UI, and we'll create a text element. And by default, the canvas here is going to be fitted to screen space. I want to change this to world space to make our units more manageable. I want to change the scale to 0.015 or something along these lines, 0.015 on all axes. That looks pretty decent, and I want to scale it up to fit most of our world screen here. I'm also going to take our text element that we just created and center it by holding down Alt and pressing in the center here. I'm also going to scale it up on the font size to something like 24. I'm going to center it both horizontally and vertically and change the color to a white. Now we can see it pretty clearly. Let's call this a test word. And we can now see that we can easily move this around the screen and have it fall down if that's what we wanted. But a very nice thing that we could have on this object is a script that is kind of responsible for displaying our text. So let's create a separate script for this. We'll call it our word display. Again, let's select C#, hit create and add. And let's also rename our object here to word. And let's then drag it into our project to create a prefab out of it and remove it from our scene. So now if we double click on our word display, we can go ahead and sketch this out. So the first thing that we need at the top here is actually we don't need start and update here. We might need update at some point, but not start. So let's create a public reference to our text element. So public text. However, whenever we're dealing with text, we need to be using the correct namespace. So up here we'll import unityengine.ui because text is the UI element. So we'll create a public text. We'll call it text, and then we'll create a public void that we'll call set word. And this will take in a string, which is going to be the word, And all this will do is simply set text.text equal to the word passed in. Then if we save that and go into our word here, this is where we actually set up our word. But we also need a reference to our word display in order to be able to access our set word method. So let's have our word manager kind of set this connection up. Whenever we add a new word, we could simply, create a reference to, or we could instantiate a prefab, our word prefab that we just created. We could get the word display script on that prefab, and we can then feed it into our word so that our word always has a reference to a word display. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a public word display variable here called display. Actually, let's make it private, but then inside of our constructor, we can also allow it to pass in a word display. So word display, and we'll call it underscore display. And then down here, we can go display equals underscore display, just like we do with our word. So we pass in a word as a string and our display component. And then right after, we can actually access it and go dot set word, and we can simply feed it in our word. So that should work now. However, we of course still need to set this up inside of our word word manager, I should say. So here now it's complaining that we're only feeding it in a string, which is a word. We also need to feed it our display. Excuse me. So to do that, we first need a way of spawning in our object. And I actually want to do this in another script. So let's go to our word manager, let's hit add component, and let's now create a word spawner. That's right, I warned you that we needed to create a lot of different scripts, but I think this makes a lot more sense when we split it up in this way, because otherwise we would just end up with a 2-kilometer long script, and that's not something that is really desirable for anyone. So let's open up our word spawner. As soon as Unity kind of recognizes that I'm doing things. Come on, Unity, reload the solution. That might be what it was waiting for. It was. So inside of our word spawner now, we can create a public void called spawn word. And in fact, we do not want this to be a void. We want this to return a word display so that we can access it from within our word generator, so that we can access it from within our word, so that we can call a method on a word display. I know this is crazy, but it does work, and it is actually a fairly decent way of going about it. So now inside of our spawn word method, we of course want to spawn in, so we want to instantiate our word prefab. To do that, we need a reference to a word prefab. So public game object word prefab, and we can then instantiate our word prefab as well as get a reference to it, to the object that we just instantiated. We'll call this our word object. We can then use get component on a word object dot component in order to get our word display. We can store a word display inside of a word display variable called word display. And finally, we can return the word display. There we go. So we've now created the object. We've created a word prefab. We've gotten the word display component from that prefab, and we've returned it so that now inside of our word generator or word manager, we can create a reference to a word spawner. So public word spawner. And here we can go word spawner dot spawn word. And we can then retrieve the word display from that spawner. So word display. And we can feed it in here. Or we could just do very simply word equals new word, where we get a random word and we spawn in a word prefab as well as feed it the display on that prefab. So now we're simply giving it 2 arguments, which are basically functions doing a whole bunch of stuff, but we aren't doing it inside of the script. We're doing it in separate scripts, which just looks really nice. So we're feeding it a word, and the display on the prefab. So that's one way that you can kind of link an entire system of or game system to Unity in order to display stuff. If we now save this and save everything else, we should actually, I don't think, get any errors, and I think it will work in some capacity. So if we go and select our word manager, we can drag in our word spawner, boom, to link those two up. We can take our word prefab and drag that into our word spawner. And now when we hit play, it's not going to be pretty, but something is going to work. And we also get a null reference exception. And that is because we haven't hooked up our text. So inside of our word prefab, we also need to feed this our text. We could also just use get component for this, which is probably better, but we are on kind of a tight time schedule here. So we'll just link it up manually. But now if we hit play, we can see the three words are encouraging, interrupt, and cut. And if I see here, I have three words. One is showing cut, one is showing interrupt, and the third one is showing encouraging. Yes, see, now that's encouraging because that means things are working. We aren't currently seeing it on the screen though, and that's because our words are currently not within our canvas. We need to parent them to our canvas because everything inside, or all UI elements, need to be inside of a canvas in order to be drawn. To do that, all we need to do is get a reference to our canvas inside of our word spawner. So we'll create a public transform and we'll call it our word canvas. Then when we spawn it, we want to set the parent to our word canvas. And that should actually be it. So if we now hit play, we need to reference this. So under our word manager, we need to drag in our canvas as the word canvas. And if we now hit play, we should see, yes, there the three words are. We have feel, mug, and verdict. Boom, that's awesome. And I can go ahead and write these words. I can write feel, and it will disappear from the list, but it currently won't disappear from the screen. And also, they're currently spawning at the very center, on top of each other. They aren't falling. There are currently lots of stuff to add, but the hardest parts of this system is definitely over with. Now it's just about adding detail, because that's really all that this is kind of detail. So the next thing that we can now do is hook it up so that when we write a word, we also remove it. And so that when we write each letter, that also gets removed. To do that, we just need to add a tiny bit more functionality to our word display. So now we can set the word directly, but we also want to be able to remove a letter. And to do that, we simply want to go text.text equals text.text.remove. And we want to go start at the first letter and only go one letter forward to only remove the first letter. We can also set text.color equal to color.red to show that whenever we are removing a letter on a text object, this is what we currently have focused. We can also add another method, public void remove word, for when we are completely done with the word. To do that, we'll simply call destroy game object, and that should remove the entire word. If we save this now and go inside of our word script, we can see inside of our type letter function, we want to remove a letter on the screen. We've already put that here. So we'll simply access our display and go dot remove letter, and that should be it. And inside of our word type, we want to remove the word on the screen. So here we'll go display dot remove word, and that should also be it. So now if we hit save and hit into Unity and hit play, everything that we need should be set up, and we should actually see this working. Of course, I will just separate these out real quick so we can see them. And I'm going to write DAFFY, and it disappears from our scene. The same thing with 3, and the same thing with painstaking. There we go. So now we have actually synced up our code, our actual gameplay code, with these display elements. And that was kind of the hardest part, because now it's just about adding different spawn positions, about configuring how they fall, about adding point scores and all that stuff. We can definitely go in and just add a tiny bit of that, But first, let me just check the chat here to see if everyone is doing good. And just let me check if the signal on the broadcast is still up. Yeah, okay, cool. I don't get any feedback when I'm programming that you guys are still here. So I kind of just, start pretending that I'm the only one in the room. And things get kind of weird when I realize there are 300 people in here. So good to see that you guys are still here. Just needed a reminder. And yeah, one guy in the chat is saying to use TextMesh Pro. I couldn't agree more. If you want to create this game yourself, don't use Unity's built-in text. Use TextMesh Pro. I have an entire YouTube video dedicated on the subject that you should definitely check out. It renders text much crisper, more performant, gives you more layout and styling options. It's just better in every single way, and it's been adopted by Unity, so you can get it for free. TextMesh Pro, it's awesome. I just didn't want to spend time with it here because I've shown it so many times already. Yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, we'll get going again. So I'm just gonna bring up my stuff here, and yes. The next thing that we want to add is some proper spawning. To do that, we'll go inside of our word spawner and maybe randomize the position of our words a bit. And you can definitely do this using spawn points if you want. You can do a round robin, you can randomly select spawn points, or we can just choose a random position through a random number generator. I think we should actually do that. I didn't do that for the demo, but let's try and see if we can work it out live, which is always the worst decisions I make is when I try and add something live, but let's do it. So here we're going to get a random position, so vector 3 random position. I will set it equal to a new vector 3. Here we'll want to feed it an x position, and this is what we want to be random, some kind of random x, and a y, which we're going to set to something like 7 tall. And the random x position is going to be random.range between, I think, something like negative 2.5 and, 2.5 and positive 2.5. And I think that should be within, make sure to make the F's there, the F's to show that it's floats. I think that should be within the range of our screen. Of course, it's going to depend on how wide your screen is. And really, when it comes to spawning, I have so many tutorials on how to create time-based spawners, wave systems, all that stuff. Just search for Brackeys spawn or wave spawner. There's so much information there that you can check out, but here we're just getting a random position, and we can now use this here. So spawn it at the random position and add quaternion.identity, which means no rotation at all. So now we can save that, go into Unity, press the play button, and we should see that our words spawn at random x positions right above the screen. That's perfect. Now all we need to do is go and select the words. So under word display there, we can move them. So in here we'll go void update, and inside of our update we'll write transform.translate in order, not transform direction, .translate in order to move them a tiny bit each frame, and we want to move them downwards, so 0 on the x, negative something on the y, and here we'll give it some kind of fall speed multiplied with time.delta time, and then 0 on the z. And then we'll specify a fall speed up here, so we'll create a public float fall speed and set it equal to, let's try 1. I have no idea. And let's save that and go back into Unity and hit play, and maybe it works. It does. So analyze, pretty, whoops. Oh, I selected apparel there. Now pretty perfect. Cool. Or parallel. What's the word? So now they are falling, and we can actually give them random fall speeds as well if you want. Simply go to the top here, create a start method that will randomize the fall speed just like we did with the x-axis. There's so much stuff you can do, guys. I'll leave it up to you. The last thing that we want is to create a spawner that kind of works on a fixed timer, and it would actually be really nice if words spawn faster and faster. So to do that, instead of spawning 3 words right at the beginning inside of word manager here, we'll simply remove this start method And we'll create another, yes, you guessed it, we'll create yet another component, another script here that we'll call word timer. Again, C#, hit create and add. Let's double click it to open it up in Visual Studio. And this is actually going to be really simple. All we need is a public word manager. So we need a reference to our word manager. We'll then create a public float, which we'll call our word delay. And by default, we can maybe set it equal to 1.5. And we'll also create a private float, which will be the next word time. So this will be the time after we start the game that we want to spawn the next word. And by default, we just want to spawn one right away. So we'll set that to 0. We'll then create a void update method. And in here, we want to check if time.time. So if the amount of time elapsed since we started the game is greater than or equal to the next time that we wanted to spawn a word, well, then we can go ahead and spawn a word. So word manager.addWord, as well as set our next word time equal to the current time plus our word delay. Boom. And we can then, of course, to make this, or to make the delay decrease as time goes by, so make words spawn at a faster and faster rate, we can simply multiply this with some value that is less than 1. So multiply this with 0.99. And now if we save this and go into Unity and make sure to set up this reference. So here we need to drag in. And I'll have a sip of tea here because I feel my throat giving up. We'll drag in our word manager. We'll hit play. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will spawn one word at a time, and they will fall, and they will fall at, or they will spawn at a faster and faster rate. Awesome. So now we actually have a game, and I'm gonna see how far I can get here. Actually, let me maximize this real quick, just to make things look cooler. Not that this is the most beautiful game ever created, but it works, and you can see what you can do with it. Pies, love, periodic, pies, mute, dangerous. Wish me luck, guys. And we can actually, right now we don't have a score implemented, but what we can do is I can pause the game right after. Whoops, I cannot do this while speaking. Right after I'm done to see what our current delay is. That should indicate how long we were able to go. Numerous, jazzy, starts to get hot now. Heart, not hot, distinct, friend, and sight. Yeah, that's it. All right, so I was able to go while speaking, maybe not the best of performances, until a word delay of about 0.8. So there you go. And you can see this decreasing for each word that gets spawned. And of course, we don't have a penalty right now when they reach the end of the screen. All you would do here is simply give one of the or some of the words a box collider and register it using a trigger. Or you could simply check their positions and see if they reach a certain point, well, then game over, or penalties or whatever, and make sure to select another active word. There's so much stuff that you can do, but that is everything that I wanted to show for this video. Yay! Awesome. Phew, that was actually quite a complicated one because it had so many systems, and I had to kind of keep track of all of them in my head while explaining, while live streaming. And yeah, I think I overloaded at some point, but I hope at least some of this was coherent to you guys and that it could help you a tiny bit. I really hope so. And also the hat really worked. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I hope you guys liked the tutorial, and that's basically the game for now. And we're going to switch over to a chat format where you can ask all the questions that you want. So I'm going to switch to the chat here, and you can get a closer look at the hat. I know, fancy. And I've basically had this for so many years. I'm really surprised it still fits on my head. I guess it was a bit too big when I got it. So yeah, guys, ask questions. I'm here to answer. And no, you did not come too late. You can still get some Q&A. And by the way, I will of course upload it to YouTube. Don't worry. And the project to GitHub. Awesome. So one thing that I will do before I start answering questions is plug my Patreon. So if you guys like these sort of live streams and videos and pretty much everything that we do, there is an awesome way for you to support it. It's called patreon.com. I don't know if they want me to mention the .com. It's called Patreon, and you can go to patreon.com to access it. And it's basically just a way for you to donate a monthly amount. So each month you can make a donation, you can adjust the amount at any time, you can cancel it at any time, and it's just a way for you to appreciate what we're doing and kind of help us out. And I can honestly say that Patreon is currently a huge part of our income. We are full-time on this stuff, and when I say we, I mean Sophia and I, and recently we have had a friend joining us as well, which has been really awesome. But we are living off of this stuff, so Patreon is really necessary to keep going. And yeah, let me just quickly show you guys what Patreon is, and then woo, infinite mode enabled there. So basically all you need to do is go to patreon.com/Brackeys. It is right here, and you can go and press the big orange become a patron button. I do offer a few rewards, like mentioning you at the end of the video, maybe even at the beginning of the video if you support more, and priority support and stuff like that. And also you just become part of a really nice and friendly community. So I hope you guys will go and support. I just wanted to plug it because it's been a little while, and I recently redesigned it, so now it is a lot more modern and up to date with what we've been doing, and also removes the goals because they were terrible and really outdated. I don't want to work by goals. I want to do as much content as I possibly can for you guys and not be restricted and sit there and wait until we reach a certain goal. I felt way too restricted by that. But yeah, definitely check this out, guys. I think it's pretty cool. Also, what do you guys think of the new logo and Brackeys thingy and the colors? I've done a redesign on some of this stuff. I hope you like it. Definitely give me feedback if you have something. Please be sweet about it, but you can give feedback. So I think I just started Spotify there, but now we can switch from infinite mode back into chat mode here. So thanks to the awesome or to the people who are saying that the logo looks good. You guys are awesome. And there you go. So now now Spotify is closed again. I don't think it's time to listen to indie rock. So let's see. Oh, also some people saying the old one was better. You're probably right, but I wanted something new, and I think this is more visible. The old one just became a bit boring to me. It's actually inspired by Blast. If you guys were at the Blast Pro series in Denmark, it was a CS:GO tournament in Denmark a little while back. They had a really cool logo, I think, and kind of used this color scheme. So I wanted to try something with that. Did I already use scriptable objects? Will you make a tutorial about it? It seems like a very interesting way of coding. So if you already did, I haven't made a dedicated tutorial for scriptable objects. Definitely something that I want to do. I have touched on it during the RPG tutorials though, so that can serve as a pretty nice introduction, but it is specific to the RPG tutorials. So I definitely want to do something standalone with those. And in fact, it's really good you mention it because I want to write that down. So I'm going to do that right after the stream. Greetings, hi in Berlin. Steamworks and Unity tutorial would be awesome. I don't have any experience with programming for Steamworks actually. I've heard that it can be a bit of a pain, but has become easier over the last few years, as with most stuff in Unity. Before you pretty much had to be a C++ programmer in order to get it to work, or at least get some assistance. But I think there are some nice plugins for it now. How did I learn programming? I'm actually working on a video on how I got started with game development, so stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about that video. Greetings to all of you guys saying greetings from different places. It's already always really cool to hear where you guys are from. Any recommendation on setting up an authoritative server for a multiplayer game based on collisions or rigid bodies? It's very clunky at the moment. No, I'm sorry. It's not something that I have too much experience with. You know, the server guy who knows all the good server stuff and, you know, can recommend server things to you. Yeah, that's not me. I'm the guy asking. So yeah, I really wouldn't make any recommendations. Let's see. Yeah, a multiplayer solutions comparison would be great too. So many new things, it's hard to find good info. That's true. That's actually very true. That could be interesting. What did I do at DreamHack? I played video games and yeah, checked out some of the new cool stuff and met up with people. It was very fun. Can you show us how to create and load save games? I do have a video on saving high scores using player prefs. It's a very simple saving system. Probably not what you're talking about, but I think people tend to generalize saving a bit too much. Really, you need to look into stuff like player prefs and maybe pick up an asset on the asset store if you want to get more advanced, or saving into XML or JSON format. And then of course, maybe check out some ways to keep that data secure. But it's really there's really a lot of ways to go about it depending on your game. Also, if you want to save it on the server, it's a different thing. So yeah, but I could definitely do more with serializing. Let's see. Will you ever make Unreal tutorials? I would love to do Unreal tutorials at some point. It's just about time and prioritization. And so far I haven't prioritized it too much because I think most of you guys are interested in Unity tutorials. But definitely let me know if you want to see some Unreal stuff. Can you make a video on sound design? I have a video on creating simple audio in Unity, so kind of an introduction to Unity's whole audio system. But it isn't really focused on sound design, it's more just of a technical introduction. This is how you do stuff. I definitely would like to do more with sound at some point, but also at the same time, it doesn't seem that too many of you guys are interested in it. I think it's something that most people just save to the very end of their project and then they kind of slap something on, which is a shame because sound can be so very important. Is it possible to have video in background of main menu? Yeah, you can definitely display video in Unity by using the video player component, I think is what it's called. And it's become much better recently. In the last video called how to create an options menu, did you create panel and you put all the sprites in them? Yes, I did create a panel, yes, and I put stuff inside of the panel, yes. How many inches is your monitor? This one is 24 and this one is 24. So 2 times 24. Video on touch controls? Maybe at some point, that could be really fun. Do you have plans on tutorials about Facebook or Play Games integration, Firebase or something similar? Not at the moment, but if enough people request it, you know it, I've said it so many times. Are you planning to do a lobby system menu? Maybe at some point. When will you put the game on GitHub? This Sunday, when I also upload it to YouTube. Actually, maybe tonight. I'll see if I have time. In your last video settings menu in Unity, you made quality settings. Does this also scale images down? Yes. As you saw, some of the quality adjustments did definitely decrease the resolution on the images. So yes, and it scales textures and also UI elements. And I didn't actually know it scaled UI elements, but it does. Why don't you use serialized field? I actually do all the time, but I do leave it out from tutorials once in a while and definitely live streams because it's all about being quick and being kind of focusing on a certain subject. And I don't want people to get distracted by words they don't know. I want to teach a subject and try and get them to understand that and not get sidetracked because they don't know the word serialized field. I would like to teach that separately. So that's why I sometimes stray away from using more advanced programming ways. That's also why I almost never use constructors or getters and setters. In this video, in this live stream, I wanted to make a point out of using a constructor and show you how cool and easy it is because of the way that we are programming, but I often tend to leave a lot of this stuff out. Can you create a first-person controller that's better than the standard assets one? I don't like the standard assets one either. Creating first-person controllers is hard. If you want a really good first-person controller that you can use for pretty much any project, I would actually recommend picking one up from the asset store. Personally, I simply love UFPS, Ultimate FPS. It's a great asset. It's also expensive, but maybe there's still sale today. I think this is actually the last day of sale, or maybe it was yesterday, but I know it was on sale and it often is. definitely check that out. Will you teach us about multiplayer? I would love to do some more multiplayer stuff. I can't do Unity. I want a personal help, but I don't have $200. If I had, really should give it. I'm sorry, I cannot help everyone. I really try and help as many people as possible, especially if the questions are fairly simple for me to answer. If I just get dumped a project and need to open everything up and look around, it just takes too much time. But I try and answer as many questions as possible. I'm sorry, there's plenty of help to get on the different forums, and really just try things out and try not to start too complicated. Just do something that you know that you can achieve and then play around with it. That's the best way to learn. Don't break your neck. Did you do Ludum Dare? No, and I'm so darn pissed about it. Don't mention Ludum Dare in my live stream, guys. I will shut it down. Oh, yeah, no. Fortunately, I was doing something really fun, which was DreamHack, but I did not get to participate once again. Yeah, but I will do something soon, I think. Congratulations on participating in your first Ludum Dare. Let's see. Will you do a tutorial about ads? Ads in Unity. That's something that I could definitely do if I get enough requests for it. I've done something with services before. I've done analytics, and that went pretty well. I think there isn't a lot of information about it, so that's definitely something that I'll put on the list. What advice would you give to a new programmer who wants to dive into the programming industry? Depends on what you define by new. If you define it as I have programmed for a long time, but I haven't had a job yet. I have very little experience in finding jobs and getting positions and all that, since I've pretty much been freelance for my entire life, so I wouldn't know too much about that. I hear it's a lot about being willing to take pretty much anything, and then just showing what you're able to do, even though your position might not fulfilling the requirements of your position, and then some. I hear that's the way to go. But in terms of just learning programming and wanting to take a peek at the industry and what programming is like, just get started. Just start making stuff. And that's also something that's going to help you get a job. Having a good portfolio, having something to show is very important, even for programmers. Showing, I made this, I made this. I know these systems. I feel comfortable using this stuff, is something that just cannot be underrated. So really just do it. Just do something. Make something and start small. How do you make a multiplayer card game like Werewolf or Mafia? That's not something that I can answer in the live stream. I'm sorry. How can I say what's a script and what isn't? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. If you could rephrase it, that would be awesome. All right, you guys are throwing the difficult questions now. Do you plan to make a video game or a video on mobile game optimizations? No, not really right now, but I would definitely like to do something on performance optimization in general, and that should also apply to mobile. That is what I would answer. Some people want to see RTS stuff. RTS stuff is super advanced, but we could do something RTS-like. Let's see. One guy's linking to his Ludum Dare game. Should we check it out? Should we check out the Ludum Dare game? I'm going to open it up here. I think we should. A lot of you guys are talking about Firebase. Should I know what Firebase is? Better mobile apps and grow your business. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of what this is at the time. Looks like something created by Google. Builds apps fast without managing infrastructure. Have I missed something? Okay, I'm sorry, I'll have to look into Firebase. I'm sorry, but let's play some Ludum Dare games. Let's see. I'm going to switch over here, put this over on the other screen, switch into the main view, and we are going to open up, that's the Patreon. Oh yeah, patreon.com/Brackeys. Boom. Here, Unity game, Blackthorn Pro. Really like this intro screen. It's cool, man. Every single day we hear and see things that influence. It can be good, and of course, it can be bad. Words, opinions, society. It can transform you. Negativity will try and shape you into some hideous vessel of yourself. This is really neat. I really like this intro. Don't let that happen. Alright, let's see where we're going here. Be yourself, start. Okay, so you can be switched about and rules. I should probably read the about. With this game by myself for them there for the combo from my channel. Oh, check this out, guys. Blackthorn prod. Cool. Rules. Rotate with the left and right arrow keys. Get the 50 slimes of negative influence into the hole. The more you have stuck to you, the worse things get. Alright. I'm ready for this. And I'm definitely going to suck at this. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. What's the difference between the yellow ones and the not yellow ones? No. This is hard. And this is also really fun. I really like the sticking onto mechanic, and I really like the backstory. Oh, I can use it to destroy the gooey things. Well, that's awesome. I really suck at this though. There we go. Please. This is surprisingly difficult. This is super cool. I really like the art direction, the simplicity. Oh no, this is bad. Guys, I'm just gonna do this. No, for a win. Oh, Jesus. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I failed. Really, really well done. I love the menu. I love the intro. I love the art direction. I don't have sound enabled, so I cannot comment on that. If the game has sound, I don't know. The mechanics are super interesting. Only thing that I would change is maybe make it so that it takes longer for it to become difficult. At least for me. It felt fairly well balanced, and then holy shit, I couldn't do a thing. But that's probably because you're using some kind of exponential difficulty curve, and you have to really be careful with those because they will get out of hand really quickly. So, but really, really nice game, and yeah, I really like the art of it, and the introduction was with the story was really good. And maybe also more particle effects. I love particles, but really cool. How would I feel if your future son daughter used JavaScript instead of C#? I think I'll just be really happy if they program. Can you make a tutorial on translucent material? Maybe at some point. I don't do too much shader writing, but I definitely want to do something with shaders at some point. From what country are most people that are watching you? I think most of you guys are from the US, some people from Denmark, England, and a lot of people from India actually. What is your next game tutorial series on the YouTube channel? I haven't planned one yet. Particles? Yes, particles are fun. Biscuit. Oh, thanks. From Italy. Yes, Cat-like Coding has awesome tutorials on materials and shaders and other stuff as well. Definitely check him out. A shader tutorial series? That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be really nice. All right, guys, I think that's enough for questions, and we also played a game and everything. Yeah, I think this was a success, and also we didn't get that many errors during during the tutorials. So that's awesome. Look, I'm gonna take off the hat. Yeah, I know it's sad. I'm all red here. It was really hot having that on. It looks pretty fun. Okay, I'm gonna put it back on until the stream is done. Otherwise I just get too self-conscious. So yeah, the hat's back on. Don't worry, but we will still end the stream here. So thank you guys for all the questions. I hope you guys had fun. I really did. Let's end the stream by everyone writing what country they're from in the comments. I really want to see that. That could be super fun. So yeah, definitely write where you're from right now, where are you based, where are you watching this from. And other than that, check out patreon.com/Brackeys if you want to support these streams and the content in general. You guys are awesome. Couldn't do it without you. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Thanks to all the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in November, and a special thanks to Judaman, Armin Narusi, Infinity PPR, Hans Hoftune, Cyborg Mummy, Derek Heemskirk, Faisal Marify, James P, Dan Evans, Thomas Woolley, Superman the Great, John Beauregard, Cole Cabral, Jason the Tito, Alex Rokitsky, Manolis, James Rogers, Robert Bund, Rob Farn, and Erasmus. You guys rock!